Welcome to McDougall. On today's show, David Hoffman will answer the question, does a real doctor ever use herbs? Hello, I'm Wayne Judd. And now the man who will tell us everything he never learned in medical school, Dr. John. Hello, John. Good to see you today.
I wish we had a show long enough to tell you everything I didn't learn in medical school.
I take it you could give us a long list of things you didn't learn.
It would be a very long list.
What's the most important thing you never learned in medical school, John?
I would have to say one of the most important things is you don't scare a person with dying of heart disease to change their diet. What you scare them with is the fact that they'll lose their sexual abilities.
Oh,
particularly with
that
men.
would scare a lot of people.
I tell you,
it would scare me.
Every time I run a clinic, I have people who come in, they're threatened with bypass surgery. I say, we've got to change your diet so you can stop the progression of this disease. And they're only half listening. But then when I bring up the idea that somehow their fork and spoon is connected with whether or not they'll be able to perform in bed, then they start listening. Impotence is the name. And it's a problem that many, many men suffer from, particularly as they age. As they get older, they lose the ability to perform. They still have the desire, they just can't sustain an erection. And this is a strong motivation for people to change their diet, and I bet that surprises you.
Well, it surprises me a lot. I was going to ask you, what causes it?
What would you think caused it?
I thought men lost interest, frankly, but I guess you're saying that's not true.
Well, you know, that subject came up one time. I asked my father, because I was having difficulty concentrating. I kept thinking about the opposite sex so much.
You asked your father about that?
And I asked my dad one day, I said, Dad, how old do you have to be before you stop thinking about the opposite sex all the time?
How old was he?
And he said to me, son, he says, you'll have to ask somebody older than I am.
Oh, I see.
So I don't think that's the way it is, that as you get older, you stop interest in sexual matters, but you stop performing.
You can't perform.
And a lot of people, Wayne, they think it's because of some psychological changes like you mentioned, but actually it's a physiologic change. And it's one related to heart disease. What happens is to sustain an erection, you have to fill the penis with blood to make the organ hard. And in the process, what happens is if you close up the arteries, you can't get the blood to fill the organ. And so you can't sustain an erection, you can't perform sexually. And so that's the first thing people have to think about to get their function going again, is they've got to get their circulation going again. You can do that with a good diet. You reverse the atherosclerosis, and you improve the general circulation.
Well, what is the typical treatment for this? What do doctors tell men who are impotent to do?
They tell them to get a plastic insert. But that's not what you want to do.
Oh, no, I certainly don't.
No. There's another approach, and many doctors are also aware of the fact that medications, particularly high blood pressure medications, certain heart medications, will interfere with their function. For example, 40% of the people on blood pressure medication note that they have difficulty with their sexual activities from the medication. And so if you can get them off the medication, and again, you can do that by changing diet and lifestyle, you have improved people's lives in that particular important aspect. So here, you're getting people off medication that impair their function. You're also improving their general circulation. And as a consequence of doing those two things, you've done a lot of things.
You keep them, well, you keep them in good love condition.
You help them function like a young man.
That's
and they
great.
like that a lot. But there's another way to approach this problem, and our guest is going to tell us about the herbal approach to improve sexual function with a very important herb. And it's going to surprise you how many herbs you can use in medicine to really help your patients out. I was certainly surprised. And so after we come back from this break, we'll meet David Hoffman.
You can learn English at home. Watch Hello Channel.
You would be surprised to find out that a medical doctor is interested in herbal medicine. But if you stop and think about it, many of our most powerful drugs come from the plant kingdom. They're herbs originally. For example, aspirin from the willow tree, or digoxin, a powerful heart medicine, comes from the foxglove plant, or one of the most powerful cancer drugs, vincristine, comes from the periwinkle plant. And so I ought to be interested in plant medicine, herbal medicine. Unfortunately, they never taught it to me that way in medical school. And so to remedy my deficiency in education, I associate with people like David Hoffman, who is author of many books and a CD on herbs, and also professor of integral medicine of the California Institute for Integral Studies in San Francisco. David, good to have you with me. You always stimulate me with when you're on this show, and because of our last segment, I think we should start out talking about the herbal treatment of sexual dysfunction, impotence.
Well, I would agree with you completely that it has to be secondary to nutrition and lifestyle and, reassessing what we're doing with our lives. But there are a number of herbs which quite specifically affect the blood flow and the innervation of the penis. The main one is yohimbe. I think one of the prescription drugs that is used for impotence is yohimbine.
Right, they call it Yocon. Drug companies have picked that up and decided to put it in capsules, so it's quite popular.
Yeah, well, that's the prescription drug, but the herb is, readily available. But still, just using that sort of herb by itself, or as a herbal equivalent of a magic bullet medication, is really missing the point of what herbalism is about. There's a possibility with using medicinal plants appropriately of bringing the whole nutritional toning approach into pharmacological medicine. And this is being embraced extensively now in Europe. I think it's in Germany. MDs have to do 2 semesters of what is called phytotherapy, plant-based therapy, before they can actually qualify.
You look at herbs as more of a holistic or well-rounded type of medicine, don't you? I mean, they do more than just a specific thing an isolated drug does that's put in a gelatin capsule.
Oh, yeah. There are plants which contain such strong chemicals that the effect is the effect of the chemical, like foxglove, which is what digoxin comes from. It's a very dangerous plant because you would just get the impact of an uncontrollable dose of the very active medication. But if we're thinking about plants like burdock or nettles or a whole range of very gentle remedies, they're not having an impact which is due to a specific chemical. It's any more than a good salad is really a source of a particular nutrient. It's a well-rounded green affirmation of life.
Let's talk about some categories, because people are always looking for tangible things they can do to improve their health. Somebody's looking for herbal preparations in terms of heart disease, cholesterol, lowering blood pressure. What kind of things should they be looking for?
Actually, some very, very simple things. One of the most important tonic remedies for us in the West is going to be hawthorn berries, which contain a group of flavones which dilate the coronary arteries. And there's now abundant clinical research from Europe, showing that it can be used, especially in the elderly, for lowering blood pressure, for treating angina, treating congestive heart failure. Then nutritionally, they're raw garlic as a way of lowering blood cholesterol.
And 9%, the Annals of Internal Medicine said. Annals of Internal Medicine, a conservative medical journal, 9% drop in cholesterol with garlic.
Yeah. There's extensive research in the peer-reviewed journals, and it really continues to amaze me when I come across doctors and other professionals saying there's no evidence for these things.
But David, this all sounds so contemporary somehow, and it's like it's the thing that's going to be in very soon. Hasn't this been around for a very long time?
Oh, yes.
Haven't so-called primitive cultures like the Native Americans and so on dealt with a lot of this without having our background of all of the problems that...
Very, very definitely, but even if you look at the foundations of modern Western medicine, the American pharmacopoeia in, between the wars, was still 3/4 medicinal plants. 25% of what is in the US pharmacopoeia at the moment is still medicinal plants.
Interesting.
And the turn of the century, if you opened any pharmacology book that would have been studied at a medical school, it would have been about the pharmacology of medicinal plants.
So where did it all go? Why do we swallow pills hand over fist today?
Because there's much more money to be made from pills. It's really very simple. You can't put a patent on a plant. You can put a patent on a constituent. I'm at the moment teaching a course specifically for doctors and nurse practitioners in Sonoma County, Northern California, where they're really interested in the use of medicinal plants for a whole range of mild conditions which don't warrant major chemical intervention, because the people in the front lines of the medical profession are seeing the damage that's being done, and they don't want to do that. It's the medical establishment that is still ignoring all of this.
And patients are interested in getting more self-control, and they look at herbs that you can buy in natural food stores as a source for that. But the confusing thing, I know, even as a doctor, is you go to your natural food store, your herbalist store, and you just don't know which bottle to pick, and that's where you've tried to help people, David Hoffman, and You have the information source book of herbal medicine, which is for the professional,
Yes.
giving them the scientific literature. The new holistic herbal, which is for the consumer, to give them information as far as what herbs to pick,
And also how to use them.
how to use them, and Elder's Encyclopedia, or an Elder's Herbal, which is for the consumer, and then the Herbalist CD-ROM. You're getting really modern, going to the CD-ROM on the computer
Yes.
and having to look it up. Makes it real simple.
Yeah.
And David Hoffman has all kinds of great information on specific problems and how to deal with them with herbs, and we'll be back with more of David Hoffman in just a moment.
Looking for a brighter future? Learn English and make it happen on Hello Channel.
And a professor of integral health from the Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, David Hoffman, I would like you to think of him as an herbalist. He deals with herbal medicines to help people with their health. And the herbal medicines in general are very effective, relatively safe, but there are some exceptions. And an area that the medical businesses have ignored, sad on my account, because I really would have liked to have had the advantage of herbal medicines to help my patients more. How about in the category of prostate trouble?
Oh, well, that actually is a very easy one because there is a plant, and my English accent is often misunderstood here. It's an American plant called saw palmetto.
Saw palmetto.
All right.
Yeah.
However,
that's
you,
right. Saw,
it's your
got
plant.
it.
I'm a tourist. It grows
Saw
in...
palmetto. That's how I got it pronounced.
Yeah.
Saw palmetto.
It grows abundantly in the southeast of the U.S. It contains a range of constituents which have the clinically proven effect of reducing benign prostate enlargement. It seems to interfere with the way in which testosterone triggers off the extra growth in
My
in
father-in-law
later
gave up Proscar and started on saw palmetto, and the relief was tremendous.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
so the Proscar is the anti-testosterone
Yeah.
medication that doctors prescribe with great cost and considerable side effects, and the saw palmetto has been very effective for him.
There have been some comparative studies showing statistically that the saw palmetto is more effective.
Yeah, but does it make more money for the drug company?
Of course not.
Oh, well, it's
I
never
have a
going to
little-
sell.
I have a little anxiety growing within me right now, and assuming that other viewers do as well. I mean, you're using these wonderful lyrical terms here. We will let our viewers know that they can pick up a volume that will explain all this. They can look these things up. Does one of your volumes actually speak to issues of prostate and so on, and you can look in an index and find these things in there? Good.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes,
you
all
can
of
even,
them
you can
do.
even do it on CD-ROM with the
CD-ROM
herbalist
will
and
do that
CD-ROM,
too.
so you don't have to.
You don't have to
That's
have
the
a
confusing thing,
computer to
Wayne.
be a
I have
herbalist.
that problem, even as a physician. It is, and this is why I like to do shows with David Hoffman, is because I learn so much all the time. And it's just a matter of becoming familiar with it and having resources like that makes it easy.
Accessibility becomes very, very challenging because after we hear and view, the issues are how do we go out and buy them?
And one of the big problems, and you expound upon this, is that when you go to the store and you buy a bottle of herbs or a package of herbs, there's only the name on it, no description. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's the law.
It doesn't tell you how to use it.
That's because the FDA
What it's for.
will refuse any information or any information which could be seen by them as being a claim. And it just seems to break all the First Amendment rights that people have.
To protect the consumer, though, David Hoffman.
Yes, yes. It's perfectly true that there are some plants that are really quite dangerous and should not be in the stores. On the other hand, there are some herbs which are in the stores which you need to know how to use safely. But when the FDA use safety concerns as a way of blocking any information about the effective use, it just seems to be obvious that they're trying to push the consumer into complete dependency on the drug companies. In Wales, where I'm from, there is an old idea that the medicinal herb that you need is the commonest weed growing in your garden. And in Wales, where it's very wet and there's lots of things growing, that can probably be the case. But over here, how would you know? How would you easily find out what the properties are of the herbs in your garden? 1 generation, 2 generations ago, it would have been the parent or the grandparent who knew that. The whole field of herbal medicine, which used to be very, very strong in this country, was suppressed effectively just before the Second World War. So now there's an incredible growing interest in it, but it's as if it's a whole new field.
And it's a grassroots movement.
Oh, yes.
It's the consumer
yes.
demanding.
There are no leaders.
Right.
No leaders.
Now, if I find out by some research what I'm supposed to buy, a couple of questions. How do I know how much of it to use, and how do I know what its shelf life is?
All right. They're really important questions. First thing I would say is you need to refer to books rather than assuming that the people in the stores know anything to really tell you. There are some very good herb stores, but on the other hand, you can't always depend on
Well,
it.
can you get into do you get into the old wives' tales and some of the formulas that people have just passed down from generation to generation? And are those scary and dangerous? How do we know who an expert is in this field?
If they were scary and dangerous, those old wives wouldn't have had any children.
And just by you saying that, though, Wayne, you know, that it's old wives' tales,
Yes.
it makes me think that you kind of believe that herbal medicine doesn't have a lot of value to it.
A little skeptical, maybe.
Skeptical. And that's the attitude I think all of us come to this with.
And that is an attitude that is very unique to the last 20, 30 years as a product of better living through chemistry. That, you know, there is a miracle cure for everything. And it's a very uniquely American attitude. And I don't mean that in any judgmental way. It's a product of some very clever advertising and almost social manipulation.
So is it better in Wales?
Well, in Wales, it's drug medicine, which is the upstart new stuff.
And something as common as something you can use yourself can't be worthwhile. It seems to be the attitude that we have in this country. But you can get control over the situation. There are books like David Hoffman has written, An Elder's Herbal, the New Holistic Herbal, and if you're a professional, the information source book on herbal medicine, this is the one that I value because it gives me a chance to look up the scientific references, and of course my CD-ROM player on my 486 IBM really enjoys the Herbalist on CD-ROM. And we'll be back with our special guest, David Hoffman.
Why should you watch Hello Channel? Because learning English should be inexpensive, and learning English should be available to everyone. If you want a brighter future, join us and say hello.
And with us, David Hoffman, a man who enlightens me. Every time we get together, I learn more and more about herbs and how to help my patients. And I end up prescribing herbal medicine more and more, especially when it comes to cholesterol lowering. I got a whole list of things, including Goo Lipid.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I haven't used that very much. It's from India. It's part of the Ayurvedic medical tradition. And something that I'm really discovering in America is that there's a tendency to go for very glamorous foreign
Well, just
things.
the name attracts your attention.
Well, it actually comes from the Latin name, which is, well, the whole Latin name is Commiphora McDougall. And the Ayurvedic name for that plant is McDougall. So it's the lipid extract.
Goo Lipid. They report a 21% drop in cholesterol and triglycerides in 16 weeks in the scientific literature.
Yes.
How about arthritic herbal preparations for people with arthritis?
They can be very effective at alleviating symptomatic discomfort, and used in the context of appropriate diet and lifestyle changes, I think they can really contribute to a reversal of both rheumatoid and osteoarthritis.
Of the inflammation.
Of the inflammation, and then also some change, some positive change in the bone damage that happens.
Well, you'd be way ahead of anything else on the pharmacy market if it did that, because the pharmaceutical drugs, they just, you know, they stop the pain. The progression of the disease continues.
Well, the whole approach is different. We're not actually aiming at just inhibiting inflammation. This is where the theory really diverges, and there's the use of a group of plants called alteratives, which from a scientific perspective are really difficult to explain. They somehow help the whole body be healthier. And they can, as long as you get the arthritic process early enough, the bony changes can be reversed.
Are there some names you can give us with arthritis as far as herbs?
For the rapid symptomatic relief, I would think of meadowsweet and willow bark. Meadowsweet is probably the best, but it's not as widely known in this country. It grows here and it's in the stores. For more deep-seated transformative changes, I would think of black cohosh, alfalfa, and an American plant that is just about forgotten about here, which is called buckbean, B-U-C-K-B-E-A-N. It's used extensively in Europe, and I wouldn't want to treat arthritis without it.
The hottest topic in herbal medicine, not today but tomorrow, is herbal medicine in terms of estrogen replacement, in terms of preventing menopause, in terms of preventing women from hormone-related cancers. What kind of groups, what kind of plants are we talking about there?
Well, that's an area we can really do a lot for. But at the same time, I would really voice some warning about the hype that is appearing for, miracle cures and natural progesterone, which is not from plants, it's synthesized. But there is a plant called Vitex, Vitex agnus castus, that is also known as chasteberry for historical reasons. It doesn't actually make you chaste. That seems to have the ability, through working on pituitary hypothalamus issues, to allow the woman's body to re-establish an appropriate balance. So you can't get rid of menopause, and I don't think it's an appropriate thought, really. Menopause is a very important rite of passage, and it could be argued that one of the things wrong with men is that we don't really go through that sort of menopause. But with the use of Vitex and a few other herbs, you can really control hot flushes and a lot of the discomforts that go along with it. But you can't use herbs to remove the experience altogether. It's part of life.
Just help things. We could go on with this forever. I just want to tell people again about the resources, David Hoffman. The Herbalist is a CD-ROM that you can get, and you can get this in any of your computer stores. The information source book on herbal medicine is for the professional, if you want to get into the literature. And for practical issues, you can read the New Holistic Herbal and An Elder's Herbal. It'll teach you how to pick the right medicines for you. Thank you, David Hoffman. Great show.
Thank you.
Until next time, stay healthy and happy.